Welcome to Nacht Waffen Pilot with Penny Bradley, and today we are lucky to have Herr Major come back. And we will be starting off with the YouTube question about, can we find out more about the civilian colonies in the German breakaway civilization? Welcome, Herr Major.
Good morning or evening or wherever you're at the moment. I think it's evening where you're at the moment.
Where I am, it's late afternoon, yes.
Lovely.
When we show this, it will be the middle of the afternoon here.
Okay. Time's relative. Doesn't exist anyway.
There are folks who argue with me on a regular basis about time zones not existing. So
no.
It's 4:41 p.m. here in California. So you want to tell the audience what time it is there?
It is coming up to mid-morning right now. And it's a beautiful February day. And it's been the most coldest February I have ever experienced in my entire life. This is normally the hottest month of the year without comparison. And it is almost winter weather. It's crazy at the moment. We all know why, but that's not why we're here to talk about anyway. So
yeah. Herr Major was my commanding officer in a Nacht Waffen ship. Der Spatz, it translates to the sparrow. And we were collecting intel for Nacht Waffen in the region of space where the German colonies are. So we have differing memories of things. So I will let him talk about what he remembers we did.
Cool. So we wanted to discuss what we remember about the colonists or colonies, the civilian aspect of them up there in des Bundes. My most recent memory of them was when we were conducting the evacuations, and I was given the commission of a very, very old vessel, and we were having issues getting it up off the ground. It was that bad. And we had been sent to pick up a colony on an open air planet. So that's one that like isn't under the ground. They live on the surface like Earth. I don't know the name of the planet. I don't know the name of the colony. I don't remember. I do remember that the facility that we had landed at was a lot like a railway train station. You know, there was like a concrete brick deck sort of thing that you stand on to get bored, and a shelter over the top of that, you know, to shelter you while you're standing there boarding. The vessel was a very long sort of cigar-shaped sort of one. And there were delays because when we were preparing to leave, the communications unit on the vessel had packed it in. And you can't leave without communications, that's suicide. So we had to wait until we got a new package. So they had located one on this particular planet, and we're bringing it to us, but it meant we were delayed by a good half hour or so. And in the German colonies, being late is not really something that you do. You turn up when you say you're going to turn up, and you leave when you say you're going to leave, and not 1 minute earlier and not 1 minute later.
Well, I was expected to show up a little early but not by much.
Mm. But I mean, if there's a schedule, then you leave on schedule. It's very bad form to not do that, and that's a constant throughout all the German colonies. You do what you say you're going to do, even if after you agree to do it, you discover that it is not the best course of action. You try and twist it as best as you can towards the best course of action, but you still do what you said you were going to do. Which means that in the colonies, they, it's people people think an awful lot about what they're going to say and do before they do it. There is a certain minimalism to when they speak. So, they consider what they're going to say and then they say it, and they're very careful about it. And it's cultural, I think. I've never been to Germany. I don't know whether or not that might be something that came from Earth, but it is certainly something up there. It could have been because of the influence with dealing with federal authorities, because they're very much so about that sort of thing. So I remember that the people waiting on the platform, so to speak, I remember that their clothes could have been straight out of Gone with the Sound of Music. It could have been straight out of that. The mayor was angry at me because we were late. He, was very red-faced, had a big fluffy moustache, like an impressively large moustache, and he was very red in the face, and I don't think he's much used to people stuffing him around much, but I think that he knew that there wasn't much he could do about this. It's just, it's kind of, they consider it like a sign of disrespect to not turn up or leave when you say you're going to. It's like, well, don't you respect me enough to get things right? You're wasting my time.
Yeah.
That's the way they work. And if you once you operate in that sort of way of thinking, then there's nothing unusual about that. It's normal. I remember, the mayor was wearing one of those, like, it's like a little fedora sort of thing.
Okay.
It's like, it was just so cliche, like German, Austrian clothes. Like everybody was like, the little girls were wearing their little, like everybody was dressed like they were going to church. You know what I mean? They were all wearing their Sunday best. They were all. It was very quaint, and it was very beautiful. All the people. And they were all just standing there, and most of them were just kind of like worried, because we had a time frame. If we stayed there, like something very bad was going to happen, and we needed to get them out. And the mayor was fully aware of the situation. I don't think the children were much, but I don't think that they were lying to them about it. I think they just had given them basic information. So everybody on the platform was anxious. It was, very green, very beautiful area.
Was this the planet that was
Mhm.
destroyed?
I suspect so, yeah.
Okay.
I think, yeah, we had to get them off.
Yeah.
But that's my most recent recollection of civilians up there. They are, like just like people down here. Probably, I would say, if you were to get a lot of kids, they have big families. There were a great deal more adult women compared to adult men. I suspect that the men were doing other things. I suppose it might be women and children first kind of situation, you know. So it was an emergency. We were, excuse me, leaving. So yeah, so clothing. I think from recollection, all of the colonies, the different colonies, they all have their own like styles and fashions and that sort of thing. But because they're so small population wise, the fashions don't seem, I don't think the fashions progress that quickly. Not like here where every new year is a, you know, you've got to have the latest thing or else, you know. Up there, I think they're still very traditional. You know, things haven't moved on a whole lot in some ways since they left Earth, I think. But I mean, music-wise, the music that they are listening to now is like rock opera. It's definitely different to Earth music. It's like the way that they sing, you know, it's not like death metal, you know. It's not that. The singing is much more operatic, but the music itself is kind of like modern German music. And that's what they enjoy. And when they have huge, they have big amphitheaters and theaters and cinemas and all that sort of stuff on board the Aurora class vessels, which are, I believe that they're fairly outdated now, but they still use them because they're still like, you know, they're a massive investment of resources to build. I mean, they're 10 kilometers long, you know. And
My
they still work.
experience in the various Nacht
Mhm,
Waffen trips has
mhm.
been that they keep using the technology until it can no longer be repaired.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it works, you know.
Well, they've invested time and energy into it, and as long as it still works, it's still in use.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to refit these big crafts. You know, they've got all the machinery and equipment and everything.
Mhm.
I mean, of course, you know, combat-wise, they're very outdated and have, you know, been refitted with much more modern equipment. But you wouldn't deliberately take one of these things into they would never take an Aurora class vessel into any kind of conflict deliberately. It's like it's a huge part of their what would you call it, assets. It's a big asset. You know, you don't risk it. They don't even land Aurora class vessels on a planetary surface, full stop. Like they're fitted to do it, but it's too risky to risk it. You know, there's too much that could go wrong, and if something did go wrong, they could stand to lose not only this huge asset, but like thousands of you know, staff members, you know, of people, civilians and everything. Especially Aurora
Um,
class vessels, they have a lot of civilians on them.
what shape are the Aurora class vessels?
Alina did like a perfect remote viewing of them on that video that she did some years ago. And I was just gobsmacked because I remember at the time, like I was skeptical about remote viewing. and then she goes, that this popped up and I watched it and I was like, oh, okay, all right, she can do
Yeah,
it.
she is perfect.
Yeah.
The world knows her as Ileana, the Star Traveler, and yes, she is. She is really good at remote viewing.
Yeah, that was good. When I was in academy, I had to memorize the general layout of Nacht Waffen vessels,
Mhm.
they're all built with the same general layout, regardless of how big they are or how small. The reason being is that once you are familiar with one, you know where to go to find your way around any of them. It doesn't matter whether you've never been on this vessel before, they all have the same layout. So, it's also the main reason for that is that if if a vessel lost power for one reason or another, so you're in pitch black essentially,
Mhm.
you can still find your way around. You know,
Mhm.
even if it's filled full of smoke and debris and whatnot, you still can figure out pretty quickly where you are in relation to the rest of the vessel, and you can figure out how to get to the places you need to, like lifeboats, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Um, so on Aurora class vessels, they have an entire, like, they're massive. The volume of them is just crazy, but they have this entire level, and it's all on one level, that's about 3, 4 stories tall, maybe bigger. That is just a huge park, uh, shops, mall, cinemas, um, sports fields, and an and a stadium. You know,
Mhm.
and they they would have what would you call them, performances and whatnot in, like, the stadium, in the amphitheater. You go there, like, the whole ship, it would be like a like an annual, like a weekly thing. I'm not sure if they're, I just got a weird feeling that they don't work on the same week system we do. I just got that weird feeling. Something in the back of my head was like it's, anyway, I'll have to think about that later. But and I know it's like
I
a,
don't remember it being the standard Earth calendar.
yeah, I mean, the time system and the calendar, everything's kind of works differently, but they have like a regular, like, social night sort of thing on Aurora class vessels, like
Mm.
once a week, once a month, or something like that, where everybody on board who's not essential goes to the stadium or whatever, and there's entertainment, and it's just, Aurora class vessels are supposed to be for stress mediation and relaxation, and because when you're out there in the big dark in the night, it's very that could get to you when you're out there for long periods of time, and it's quite possible you could be out there for years on some occasions. So
I have been on 60 and backs where I never left the ship.
yeah, so it's very important to focus on recreation. It's uh like, I, from the military aspect, it's basically you get assigned time that you need to go and have R&R, and you don't have a choice on that. you know it's different when you're on, like, small craft like the Sparts. it's
Mm.
it's like we run our own ship the way we like it, and we just tell them that we did it to regulation, um, which of course we did.
I remember being in a white skirt way too often.
Yeah. And but on the big vessels, it's very um, scheduled. Um, and I mean, it's not like, if you didn't turn up to R&R there, you would be in trouble, but your superior would probably be checking on you and wondering what's wrong. I mean, all these things have been figured out very carefully to maximize your mental health. you know You know, they have invested an awful lot in individuals. That's how the German colonies work. I mean, they you know, they you invest in your people. You know, you educate them, you train them, you give them the best possible healthcare you can give them. So they are, you know, super intelligent, super educated, super healthy. So that if, you know, they make the best decisions, and in times of crises, they can perform at their absolute maximum. You know,
Yeah, that's what I remember is we were educated, not just trained for our job.
because you never know what you're going to come up against.
No, you
know,
don't.
and everybody, you know, I mean, there's the thing that they're fully aware of is the fact that they just don't have enough people. They don't have enough citizens. You know, and you know, every life loss is a terrible thing, and they're valuable. You know, you know, and if they find, you know, they can be even frustrated when they can't. You know, I mean, even people who, you know, would, you know, that here on Earth they would consider to be throwaways. You know, like people that you don't want to get rid of. Sorry, the people that you do want to get rid of, they would try hard to try and figure out how to fix them.
Well, I remember on one Nacht Waffen ship that I saw people told that they would be put out the airlock, except they weren't worth the paperwork.
And let me assure you, the paperwork is horrendous. So
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, that people say that sort of thing up there, though. I mean, it doesn't, you know.
People say a lot of things up there. It's kind of the cultural.
It's jeering. Yeah,
it's kind of the cultural sense of humor, and it's
yes, spot on. Yeah.
There are times that I hear on Earth think about the things I got told there, and I'm like, oh my God. And then it's like the second flash is, oh, that was supposed to be funny.
Yeah. And when they say, you know, when they say things like that, though, it's so dry.
Oh yeah.
And you're left sitting there thinking, did they just threaten me, or did they just make a joke?
Yeah, exactly. You know, you don't know, were you threatened or was that a joke? And someone like me that kind of has trouble with humor anyway, I'm sitting there going,
Well, you know, the way that we were brought into it, like there's no room for humor. So, you know, when
there was no room for humor at all at Langley.
No. And when you, like, people do what they say and say what they mean, you know, that's it. Like, if somebody tells you to do something, you know, that they mean you to do it. There's no sarcasm or you know, anything like that. Like they
or nasty pet names.
Yeah, it was just like, there was no sense of, it was just straight down the line. But up in the colonies, their sense of humor is dry and hard to know if they're joking, and can actually be hilarious, like, just because of how dry it is. Like, you might be left sitting there for a second thinking about it, and you'll just play it back in your mind, and and you'll just lose it, you know. And that's another thing. They don't. It would be unseemly for an adult to fall into guffaws of laughter like 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 for them, like chuckling is like, is like that's about as much as it gets, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So,
And no public displays of affection either.
well, no. I mean, if you're on a date, you might hold hands or something like that. But that's they're very private people, you know, kinky but private. Um, you know,
What? What just came out of your mouth?
kinky but private.
Okay.
You know, um, they don't. I think that they're just. You call them almost like stiff upper lips. Um, they have emotions, they have feelings. They just
Mhm.
it's just not seemly to express any strong feelings. You know, um, to get overly angry or overly sad or overly happy. You know, it's kind of I think it's considered to be like a childlike thing. You know, and in kids it's lovely. To see them jumping up and down and clapping their hands and getting excited. But from an adult perspective, it's just like it's what children do. I'm trying to think of cultural things that I noticed up there. um the food's good. They love their food. um and I think there were a lot of Italians that went up with them as well. It wasn't just purely Germans. There were people. Okay, I'm not talking of genetic background. I'm just talking culturally. Um, there were like people who grew up in Italian backgrounds
Well,
who went
these
up there.
were Axis allies.
Yeah, yeah.
The Germans, the Italians, the Spanish, the Japanese, the people from Taiwan, the people from
Mm.
Thailand. There were countries all over the globe that were allied on that side of the war. And it's natural that their citizens would have gone to the colonies as well.
It is natural, yeah. I think though that they were very selective on who was allowed to go. Um, to begin with. And I think that they may have regretted that in later years. How uh, I'm not going to. It's not elitist. It's um, how tight their criteria was. Um,
Well, it
but
did
I
lead to a situation where they did not have enough genetic diversity.
exactly, yeah. And because I remember that the food is just like civilian food's just great. Like, like, you know, like the the best fatty carbs and meat you could hope for. Um, and just so much variation. Like that you like, a foodie would love it up there. And there's a lot of cultural interaction between them and Earth, of course. A lot of stuff coming back and forth. Not as much as you'd think, but there's still a fair bit. And that means that
Well, I
they're
know our uniforms were mostly made on Earth. The Aegis company made the body armor.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, like they get a lot of stuff manufactured on Earth. Um, I don't know so much. Back in the 90s, there was a lot of stuff which was identifiably from Earth.
Mhm.
These days, I'm not so sure. I think they are way more self-sufficient these days.
Well, it's
Um,
been what, 30 years?
it's
You
been a
would
while.
you would think they would be more self-sufficient.
I would hope so, because I mean, the less you have to import, the 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 better your colony is, really.
Uh-huh.
But they still have tastes. they still have quite fine taste. They like a good bit of scotch, you know.
We did a fine trade in Johnny Walker Red.
Yeah, we moved a lot of that. And I remember actually furniture. Now that was something I remember, because actual timber furniture was considered to be an absolute luxury, you know, like a timber dresser or a timber dining table or timber chairs. Any of that stuff was an absolute luxury.
You're
And
talking about carved wood, or you're talking about full timber like was the style in the 70s?
I mean, like stuff made from solid timber. You know what I mean? Like not like carved. It would normally be very ornate, because
Okay.
it would come from earth, and it would be you know, it's like, you know, something you'd be very proud of, you know. The more ritzier the home, the more of this of actual timber furniture they would have, you know.
Okay.
But I remember that they I can't tell you where it came from. I don't know whether it was the Japanese that came up with it or something, but they figured out how to laminate to make sheets of what's it called? Bamboo, sheets of bamboo, and then they would laminate it. And because, you know, if you don't have organic materials like that in your home, you're basically looking at like everything's made out of either glass, steel, or concrete, and that's just not nice.
Yeah, that gets
Gets
sterile
old.
feeling.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, they figured out that they, you know, could grow bamboo really quick. It's really good for removing carbon out of the atmosphere, because it pulls it out at a rate of knots. And then you can laminate it and make sheets of it, which people would turn into like floor coverings or bench tops or anything that you wanted something more timber, like wooden, you know, but you couldn't afford actual timber. I think that one of the types of cargoes that they most definitely move is Amazonian timber, hardwoods from the Amazon. And
So
that
that's
goes,
part of the deforestation in the Amazon?
I don't think they move that much of it, not
Okay.
much at all. But like I know that they would land in the middle of the Amazon and pick up like what do you call it? Trees that had already been milled into beams, and you know, and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
And I know that that was worth a pretty penny in the colonies. They would pay top dollar for that sort of stuff. It could well be in more recent years they have started growing their own trees, but because you just didn't have like big old hardwood trees up there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's too recent. I
Hardwood
don't know.
trees take a while to grow.
Yeah. And there's also something about, I understand it's difficult to grow things like that up there, because trees like that need the Schumann resonance to form properly, because you know the cells use it as like a computer clock for their activity. So you know they don't. It's difficult to get the things to grow. So whilst you can get bamboo to just grow like it's going out of fashion, it doesn't seem to be too worried about that sort of thing. But big hardwood trees, yeah. But anyway, I don't want to talk for a while about timber, but that's something about the colonies that I recall. I remember that they hate direct light. All that there's like, as in if you went into Das Bundes house or office or vessel, they don't have like direct sources of light. All the light seems to come directed off something else. At least that's what it looks like. It might be some kind of technology, but there's no,
I
like, you can't.
remember the light was, you had strips on opposite walls, and that they
Up in
would
the
send
corners.
up in the, well, up at the edge, upper edge, and that it would direct sound energy, and that would produce the light. So there were no light bulbs or anything we would consider like a lamp, or what I grew up with, the naked bulb in the middle of the room.
Yeah, there's nothing like that. It's all, I don't know what the technology is, so I can't tell you anything about that, but I can tell you that the lights are always soft. It's very rare that there would be a harsh light. Normally the only times you'd really come across that is if there were spotlights or ship lights or something like that, I know that they don't like, you would not find harsh blue lights, as in like really bluey white lights. They're generally stuck to the softer hues, redder hues. I remember that much. Which, to be honest, after you've been in them for a day or so, they just seem perfectly normal. And then when you walk into a space that's got like a bluer light in it, suddenly everything would be really bright blue for a while. But that had something to do with the way that terrestrial eyes work. They figured out that we're supposed to be looking at frequencies that are shifted towards the red. I remember. Oh, I do remember. When I was at academy, things like blue flowers, like really blue flowers and stuff, I used to really love them because the color was just so much towards the other end of the spectrum. There you go. That's a weird thing, isn't it?
No, that's something that you notice is what doesn't fit into what's normal for you. As a child, because I grew up in this subculture where everything was coated with cigarette smoke and was kind of a gold colored, whenever that we encountered red flowers or blue flowers, it was so out of the norm that it became striking. So
I just used to love looking at them. I can't really explain it. It's just that the blue light, I mean, I don't like cool white lights. I don't like them in general. So I enjoyed the soft lights, but that real top end blue color, sort of sat with me. Yeah, weird. Anyway, but I thought might as well mention that because it's something that's different.
Well, there were a couple of things that occurred to me over the years. Prussian blue and fuchsia, which is a pinky purple, have both been used with certain mental illnesses because they kind of reset the brain to more normal frequencies. So
I suppose they'd probably be aware of that out there. I know everything they had studied, like human psychology to like a crazy level, and had figured out like the exact amount of even the frequencies of light you should be looking at, and how much time you should spend looking at different types of colors of light. And so, the mess room would have like a different kind of lighting to the bridge. Well, I mean, the bridge, of course, had its own lighting because, you normally operate fairly dark on the bridge, but because space is dark. You need the lights. um, but what else am I thinking of? Like the mess room, the cabins. They're a different color entirely. And they even have different themes of what type of materials everything's made out of.
I remember the officer's mess being very bright compared to everything else, especially right over where they were serving the food.
Trying to remember. I remember an officer's lounge.
Mm-hmm.
I remember like very like starkly white tablecloths.
Yes.
They liked their
And,
whites white.
and starkly white dress whites.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Well, mind you, it wasn't too hard because the fabric was this cool stuff. Like you couldn't stain it. I mean, yeah, like you could spill coffee down the front and you could just wipe it off, and it might leave a little bit of like a brownish sort of mark on it, but if you just wet it, the color would just come straight out. Like it was I wish they could I wish we could get that stuff now here. It would make my laundry a lot easier.
Yeah, it would.
I remember that. I remember on the smaller on dispatch, we we had to do our own laundry. but in general, on the bigger vessels, like when we're on leave on R&R on the Aurora or something, all that gets taken care of for you. And there are robots everywhere, like doing everything for you. So I remember we didn't have any on the Spats. That was interesting.
No,
I wonder if there was a reason.
it was because it wasn't an official ship. It was a private yacht that we had commandeered, and the original owner was our engineer. You remember the angry Ewok?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh
I
yeah,
remember.
the
I
angry
remember.
angry Ewok. That was because he actually owned the ship, and we were bossing him. I
Well,
don't know what he got in trouble for that his ship was commandeered.
he was a little moody bastard, that guy. Oh,
What's that in standard English?
um,
You just spoke Aussie English, and I have no idea what that meant.
an unpleasant fellow to work with.
Okay.
But yeah. What else do I remember about that little ship? When we got it, it was considered to be like new technology.
Well, yeah, it was an ET ship.
Yeah. That was the impression that I got. I remember them saying that it's very different looking to the other Nacht Waffen vessels. Like it's an ovoid egg shape. It's optical gravitic. So it gives a very different look. They weren't using any kind of gravitational shielding. They were actually making their own gravitational radiation. So that was, it was pretty cool. Colonies. We got to stick to the colonies. That's what we were talking about today.
Yeah, we're talking about the colonies today.
The robots. Okay, so I remember we were told that the robots had a very special type of computer brain that allowed them to experience some level of emotion, and they were highly intelligent. And yeah, we were just basically told, it's just our extraordinary technology, you know. And
So
to
we
be
were
honest,
lied to.
well, they weren't entirely lying. It was a weird type of computer brain they had. It was just they didn't tell us that it was wetware, you know. Um, and looking back on it now, I know that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But it's just not something like if somebody gave you a robot and said, hey, this is going to be your personal servant, he's going to help you around your quarters. You're not going to say to them, hey, do you by chance have a piece of human brain in your head? You're going to go, oh, it's a robot, cool, wow, this robot's really impressive, you know. um and I can see that Elon Musk is definitely trying to build those personal assistant robots. I
That
remember.
really worries me
Well,
because
he's also doing the
I
Neuralink as well. I think he must be aware of stuff because he's, you know,
his Neuralink is pronounced almost exactly like the Neuralink that I had when I was a pilot, because I
mm,
would be chipped to my ship, and
mhm,
the drawings, the schematics for what he is doing, right down to the outside of the chip looking like a Bluetooth, is exactly what I had
mm,
that would link me to the ship as navigator or pilot. And when I first saw his schematics, I was like, that's what I had on Mars. That's what I've had in every Nacht Waffen ship I've been a pilot or navigator for.
mhm.
And the similar thing in Kruger was just bigger,
Yeah, their
less
stuff was
less
really,
classy.
yeah. Well, that kind of labels Kruger right down, to on every level essentially.
Yeah. For the audience, Kruger is another faction that sometimes works with Nacht Waffen and sometimes works separately. And
Yeah. Well, they go wherever the money is.
they are a mercenary company, and yes, they go where the money is. And when
Mm,
Nacht Waffen needs something, they prefer working with Kruger rather than their competition.
hmm.
So, and yes, there
Yeah.
is competition. It's called Monarch. And the
Mm,
two companies, Monarch shoots up their people with black goo, whether they want it or not. And Kruger has so many enhancements that I believe the Borg in Star Trek were based on them.
mm. That's the impression I got.
Yeah,
Mm,
I have served half as many 20 and backs with Kruger as I have 60 and backs with Nacht Waffen. So I've spent a lot of time as a Borg.
mm. I have some vague recollections of that, but nothing, nothing of any great detail.
Mm.
Um, well, the robots, um, when you're on an Aurora, everyone gets one. Like there's one assigned to you. Um, it acts like everything from like a guide to a bodyguard to a cleaner, a maid, a cook, or it's basically everything that you want it to be. I remember that there were robots that had, well, how we like the the special brain they had like human neurons in it.
Mhm.
Well, they created something that was a lot more. When I was in my last, probably would have been in about 2010, I think. They had this new type of robot was coming into fashion, and I think it was some people were proud of it and some people were uncomfortable with it. And it was basically they had cloned a human, but they cloned it without the central nervous system, and then they basically stuck a robot in the body. And so, for all intents and purposes, from the outside, you're looking at what looks like a human being, but on the but they were actually a robot. And
I would be disturbed by that.
yeah, me too. But you get used to it after a while. With you know, your your VIPs and wealthy people and whatnot would have like an entourage of robots with them, and some of which would be these biological ones. And of course, if you're like a like a high level admiral or something like that, you might have um, 3 or so very beautiful female um, um, assistants following you around. I remember they never operated in pairs. It was always an odd number. So it was either 1, 3, or 5. But I think I only ever saw 5 once, I think. But um, yeah, for some reason they didn't seem to do it in pairs. I don't know why. I can't recall. Something in the way they operate. Anyway, but yeah, everyone would get one of these things. When you got assigned, when you came on board an Aurora class vessel, you would be given a now this is cool. Star Trek. You know the little badges they have where you press them and you can talk to people and that sort of jazz.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on a Aurora class vessel, you get something. It's not one of them. It's a spaceship and what do you call it? It's a disc. It's the fleet symbol. It's like a disc and like a cigar shaped craft on it. And you would that's when you're on board the vessel, that's you have that, and it's so that they can find you if they need you, but it's also to communicate, and it also is your point of interaction with the ship computer. And what would happen is on the walls there, the walls have like a strip, like a display strip on them. And I thought this was the coolest thing, because what would happen is that if you needed to go to a place or needed to find somebody, your personal um, maybe AI, I suppose, would like have like an icon on the display strip, and that's what you would interact with, and you'd like it would um, uh, take you places and show you things and communicate with you that way. It seemed superfluous because you've got a robot. But I think now that I think about it, I think the strip on the wall might be a naval thing, might be a Nacht Waffen thing, because there's something, I think that on the purely military Nacht Waffen craft, you're not allowed to have robots.
I don't remember robots on any purely military craft. No.
Yes. I think that I'm pretty sure of that. Yeah. And I think so. I think the strip is like is part of is something that they have on all Nacht Waffen vessels.
And Nacht Waffen was out of the Luftwaffe, so it was Air Force. And I've noticed that the ranks came from Luftwaffe.
Yeah, they didn't have your, although they have admirals. It's like they, it
Combined.
was, yeah, they combined them or something. Maybe they went, maybe they did like, like, so this is new. This is not Air Force or Navy. Let's kind of,
And then
take
there's
from both.
still Oberkommando, who tells everybody what to do.
Mm. And yeah, so that would, I think that's the case. I think that they don't like, I don't think that they like the robots on military craft, purely
Well,
military.
robots would be a security risk.
That's the impression that I got. Yeah.
I was
Because they're too
generally,
easy for someone external to, to hack.
well, that was the problem why I was always kept on the ships, was because I had that link to the ship's computer, which made me easy to hack.
Mm.
So I was generally kept on the ship except for their spots.
Mm. Mm. Little things. It's for everybody who's not experienced this type of thing before. It's memories come and go, and you can remember something, and then weeks later, unless you wrote it down, you might not remember it.
Well, we
And
are still being picked up, and when we are, we go through additional mind erasures.
yeah, every time. And sometimes the person who did it, the technician, can be sloppy, and sometimes they can be overzealous. And sometimes when you come back, it's funny when you come back the next day when you're driving, like, you go to get in your car to drive to work or something, and you suddenly, it's honestly, the only thing I can say is that you've forgotten how to drive a car. And you sit there and you're like, where do the keys go again?
Yeah, I've had issues sitting here, forgot how to type.
Yeah, that's something that happens. I forget how to touch type because you don't have keyboards up there.
Yeah.
And so I'll sit down at work and crack my knuckles and then go to type and go, within, it's like riding a bike. Within like a few minutes, you're back into it again. But
Yeah, muscle memory.
yeah, exactly. But you consciously to sit there and go, where are the keys again? Even though I've been doing it theoretically for decades. So, but things like that, such as driving a car and typing, that sort of stuff, that can sometimes be forgotten. But I don't think that's due to the technician being overzealous. I think it's just because you've been away from them for maybe a year or two, maybe
Or
longer.
longer. I'm usually not taken for a year or two. I'm usually taken for 20 or 60 years and brought back the same night. And I wake up and I look at Lou and it's like, okay, I am back. Okay. It's and I get taken more than one time in a night because I'll be taken by Nacht Waffen, and then the local constabulatory of the day, which could be the CIA, the NSA, the OSS, or any of the other spy agencies, will decide that they have to pick me up so that they can get the intel on what I was used for. And they may do a mind wipe on me as well. And then I'm picked up by ACIO because they technically are NSA, but they actually work for the ETs of the Cordium. And so everybody wants to know what you did. So you're taken several times every time you take it.
I don't remember too much about that when I come back, but I do remember though that it's kind of, I've upset a few people because when I've come back and gone to work the next day, and somebody who I'm good friends with, I'll suddenly see them and go, oh yes, I remember your and I can't remember their names, and
Mhm.
like I recognize their face, and I'm like, oh, it's just been
You
it has
ever
been
do that to me, and I'm going to beat you senseless.
yeah, everybody, it's not my fault. It's like I people who and it's irritating,
Oh
that
yeah.
this is one of the things that happens when you come back. People who you should be able to remember the names of, you can't. People who you've only
There
known for
are
years.
times I come back and I have a really hard time speaking English because I've been speaking German while I'm gone.
I'm trying to think if I've ever experienced that.
I will just sit here going,
I do. There are times, yes, okay. So I don't know about the German aspect of it, but there are times when I've like, see, normally on my day, the first verbal communication I'll have with somebody might be at work. So I'll basically sit down at work and start talking to somebody, or they'll start talking to me, and it'll take me an irritatingly long amount of time, like 20, 30 seconds. And I'm sitting there listening to them talking, and I am not understanding what they're saying. And it like I'll have to sit there and sort of consciously take apart what they're saying, and get them to stop for a few seconds, and then run through what they've said, and then suddenly it'll come back to me, and I'll be
yeah.
like, oh, okay. And then from that point onwards, I'll understand what they're saying. But there are definitely some times when I've come back and can't understand. It takes me a few seconds, to maybe 20 or 30 seconds of somebody talking at me before I'm actually understanding what they're saying. I don't
Well,
know
I'm
whether or
a
not.
generation older than you are. It takes me closer to 5 minutes when I first come back and
Mhm.
have to interact in English.
Well, you generally go longer than I do. There's in recent times, it seems I'm only going away for maybe a few months at a time. So maybe it's because you're going away for years.
I'm going away
Um,
for a very long time. I do have alters that are taken for short term, but they all work for the CIA and they don't speak English either.
mm, must be
So
must be interesting inside of your head.
there are days that I wish I was not in it. Uh,
um,
when you have, okay, when you have that many alters doing that many things and you have bleed over
mm,
from too many of them, you have to actually sit and think about which alter did that and where and the context and what was their assignment, and were they doing what they were supposed to be doing or were they winging it? And you're sitting there going, in the meantime, you're here in the here and now, and you're not present mentally because you're working on the stuff.
mm.
And Lou will come up and poke me on the shoulder before he talks because he knows I won't hear him otherwise.
Oh, okay, yeah, I do
You,
that.
you remember when, okay, for the audience, my partner Lou and I have vacationed with Herr Major and a couple of other people. It was one of those group event things. And Herr Major and I would just get started talking and everybody else was like, okay, walk away, let them talk. Didn't they?
Yeah, I think we were just talking shop, I think, most of the time.
Yeah, we were
They
talking shop because we had nobody else to talk shop with.
mm,
And everybody else was like, Oh
got
my
bored.
God, you went from surface to way too deep in under 10 seconds.
It's funny, you know, it doesn't seem too deep.
No, it doesn't.
No,
But that was how
it's
it was described to me, was you went from surface to way too deep in under 10 seconds, and we just couldn't keep up.
yeah.
And I'm like,
I,
alrighty then.
I remember one particular person said that they were getting a headache just listening to us. They were getting a
Yeah.
migraine from listening to us. So,
And Lou is sitting there going, When are you guys going to be done?
I
You know, I
don't
went,
think,
I want to have dinner, you know, when are you guys going to be done?
yeah, no, I don't think Lou would have an issue with it, but
No.
other people who weren't quite, yeah, they were struggling.
And when we
It's
went to
interesting.
the little alien and the waiter had to follow us out to see what kind of weirdos we all were.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we were in a long way from home, so it didn't matter. We didn't need to hold our weirdness in much. So, you know, it didn't matter if the natives got disconcerted.
You
So.
told me to stop scaring the natives.
I didn't say we were scaring the natives. I said we were just putting them off their game. Making them uncomfortable. That's, you know, we were making them uncomfortable. I think we were just confusing, you know.
It's okay.
But,
We
it's
know that.
amazing in that little alien how many photos they have of old Honolulu and you know, like
Uh-huh.
Willcraft and stuff like that, and they're all, you know, they're like you know, UFO over Canada and all that sort of stuff, and it's like, oh, that's a sports model.
Yeah,
You
we knew what they were. And we're standing there looking at the pictures and looking at all the pictures of the people who had been there and wondering why, they haven't taken photos of us. They must not know how weird we really are.
It was interesting though, because on that wall there are just so many photographs of craft.
Yeah, they were.
It was really interesting, sort of like, it was for a lot of people they're looking at UFOs, but my experience, I felt like I was looking at a wall of photos of vintage cars.
Yes, yes. It was vintage cars for sure. Um, More like vintage planes.
Yeah, vintage aircraft.
Yes, vintage aircraft. And
Yeah,
it was like, I remember that one.
yeah.
You don't want to fly that one because it gives off too much radiation.
Mm,
You end up spending too much time in region.
yeah. Although I've learned to keep my trap shut at these things, because you know, if you go to like Roswell and go to that kooky museum they've got there, and you end up sort of like saying, like, you know, oh, that's all wrong, and you know that this is, you know, and all of a sudden
Did
you
you do
realize that
that?
I was talking to somebody who knew a little bit, and I was busy saying, oh, you know, this is cool, but they've got this wrong, this is not how it happened. And you know, I'm not going to say I know anything about the Roswell thing. I know like a couple of details, most people don't, but it's not like I know much about it. But bits of material and recreations and stuff they've got, you know, some of them are a little bit wrong, but you know,
A little bit.
probably, you know,
A little bit.
it's dramatized, you know, it's entertaining, you know,
Yes.
but you know, and you know, just like when you're sitting there and you're watching like a movie of a historical thing, like a Roman movie or something like that, and you sit there and you critique their historical inaccuracies and whatnot, and somebody
Or
ends
when
up,
you sit there in a sci-fi movie and we're going through the details that were actually right, and everybody
yeah,
around us tells us to shut the F up.
yeah, and I get told, you get told, you know, just suspend your disbelief, just enjoy the story, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so that's what it wound up being at the Roswell Museum. I just gotta sit there and enjoy the drama, you know. um, but you know, I mean, you know, a mutual friend of ours reminded me that, like, I think on one occasion I commented that something, why is everybody obsessed with this? It's just really boring and mundane. And he said, well, it might be boring and mundane to you, but to these people, it's like, it's like crazy sci-fi, like, world changing type stuff. And sometimes you forget that, you forget where you are.
I have had to actually just stop, and if I'm not at home on my computer, I generally am very quiet about it. I have told my primary physician that I have a radio show and that it's about the disclosure movement. I don't think she's watched any of it, but that's okay.
If she gives you a weird look, I'm really glad that actually, I mean, like, yeah, the disclosure, people saying like they're getting disappointed that they're saying it didn't happen, but it has. I mean, like, there's documentaries out now about the MK Ultra stuff, which is like the stuff that they was the main reason why they didn't want to disclose,
Yeah.
the true history,
That was the
and
biggest reason, was because of the MK stuff, that they would end up going to prison. But you've got to look at the generational stuff too. The generation that started that and is criminally responsible for it
mm,
is dying.
mm.
So
But
anybody after that could claim that, well, we weren't responsible for it. We were just doing our jobs.
that's right. And so that's what, I mean, I know that they tried to put off the disclosure for, I mean, ultimately the powers that be, I think, would like to leave it permanently, but they've got a timeline. They have things that they have to disclose within the very near future, and they did. But they did enough that they said that they could say that they did, but the general public, I think, missed almost all of it.
The general public, it just went and gathered
Yeah.
speed as it went past.
Mhm.
But we've got parts of the community that are waiting for the president to announce it, that until the president announces it, it's not disclosed. And I think those people are going to be in for a very rude disappointment, because I don't think the president is ever going to disclose it. What we are going to get will be a leak from the military with contact from extraterrestrials to the public.
Yeah. And then the president will go, he'll get wind of it through the news, and he'll, whoa, that's crazy, this is amazing, and he'll be just as new to it as the rest of us, so that he can be, one of us. And yeah. Oh well, in the meantime, we can just keep on living in our own weird bubbles. It's, I don't think people here realize that how primitive the situation is here, compared to out there.
They
Barbaric.
don't. They think that they're the pinnacle of creation, that anything that is not human or angel is a demon. And they have no concept of physical beings with intelligence that are not human. That is a completely foreign concept. Even at conferences, I have a hard time dealing with people who think that everything we talk about are demons. And in fact, the last one I spoke at, the head speaker, the only one of us getting paid, was standing up there saying that if it wasn't a human, that it needed to be killed.
Oh God.
Throughout the entire galaxy, not just on Earth.
That's a lot of killing.
That's a lot of killing. A lot of killing.
I mean, if people want to know the way in which even in the colonies out there, Earth terrestrial people are seen, if you imagine the way that you would look at like Kalahari tribesman's village, little mud brick houses with like the odd metal tool, some crazy superstitions. If you were to turn up and land in a helicopter, you would probably expect to have a bunch of people crowd around you with spears trying to poke you. They may kill you, they may not. It just depends on their mood at the time. Some witch doctor might come up to you and like either decide that you're evil and like decide that they need to pour some sort of weird concoction in your eyes or something, or they might decide that you're a god, and they might all just drop their weapons and suddenly decide that they love you, and then they expect you to tell them what to do and run their lives for them because that's easier, and that's terrestrial Earth for you.
We do seem to be brainwashed to do that, yes. We either kill you or we worship you.
I understand that it was actually genetic programming, that essentially terrestrial humans have it built into them to need, we call it a religious framework, I suppose, or religion. But really what it is it's a mentality where you feel like you need a superior being to tell you what to do, what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing.
Slave mentality.
Absolutely, 100% is. But
and our education system, at least in the United States at the current time, is designed to reinforce that.
I agree.
So
and
it's frustrating as hell trying to talk to younger people who have not been taught to do critical thinking. And when you try to reason with them, they throw religion in your face. And yes, people, New Age is religion.
Yeah, or Space Jesus, or
oh God. You remember Space Jesus from Reality Proof.
I love Space Jesus.
Yeah.
Can you find out if they can send you the video and you can tack it onto the end of this interview, please? That would make my day.
I'll do what I can. I will. I'll do what I can about that one. I'll get a hold of Dan. Don is not speaking to me at this time. The reason that they went off the air was that one day Don woke up and realized that everything I had told him was the truth. And he's an anarchist. And the concept that the ruling class of humanity was actually being telepathically controlled by an ET group was too much for him. It was, we can never be free because these ETs won't let us. And when he realized everything I had said was the honest truth, he just basically lost it. He has an ET go home bumper sticker on his car. And he's only interacted with me once since then. And that was when I posted that we had that he and I and Dan had copyrighted the term Nacht Waffen under Creative Commons
Mhm.
with attribution, which means it's open to the entire community, but they're supposed to remember I came up with it.
Mhm.
And we had to do that because there are people in the community that are trying to take our terms and make them private and charge money for them.
Which is
So
crazy. It's like copywriting the word Jupiter or something.
exactly. And
Mm.
so we made it Creative Commons with share with attribution.
Mhm.
And now we've got big names in the community using my term, and they don't even know it came from me.
And bands. Like there are bands writing songs like that it like the like named after it and all sorts of weird stuff. It's kind of
Oh yeah, oh come on. Pyramids on Mars made my theme song and called it Nacht Waffen.
yeah.
And I mean, I'm like
But
gobsmacked.
but that's one thing because Kevin Estrella knew about like had contact with you, but people who had no contact with you, who are not familiar with you or the subject, coming like naming their own stuff after it.
Yeah,
And that's kind of very supportive because it's kind of like the name is outside of our community. It's
yeah. But, I shared it because one of the big names was trying to copyright
oh
it.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And that's the only time that Don has spoken to me since he quit.
Mm,
And I understand that Don and Dan are talking about getting Reality Brief going again.
mm.
That would be a great thing. They were a great program.
They were funny. I used to love listening to them.
Oh, yeah.
Just especially their news section. I loved their news section. you know, that was great. I hope they go back to that again.
And their assortment of guests.
Mm, mm,
I mean,
very much so.
I don't know. I had fun when I was on their show.
Yeah. Well, it's a big shout out to you out there at Reality Brief. Get that show back up, man. Don and Dan, you can do it.
So Tessa is no longer on Facebook or anywhere that I could contact her, and she has reverted to her Catholicism. So she would probably not be available for them.
Hmm.
Uh,
Well, if
she
there's if
had
there's
Morgellons, so it was a lot of stress for her to do the show anyway.
yeah. Well, if there's one thing that you learn up there is that um, there's always a solution.
Yeah, there's always a solution if you're willing to look for it.
Hmm. And that even in possible situations, there's always a solution. You just have to think long enough and hard enough about it and not freak out. Mm. Well, Penny.
We have about a half hour left.
Oh, okay, all right. Hmm.
I
Well,
heard
could we?
that wanting to close off. We have,
Well, we can continue to do this, but I'm going to need a 5-minute break. Is that possible?
okay, yes, we can do that. So what else did you want to talk about?
Well, we thought I thought maybe we could talk about more conventional military stuff. People seem to
Okay,
like that.
they do.
One of the most awe-inspiring weapons that I've ever seen is a space-to-surface weapon. and these are, it's a type of particle projection weapon. And I believe that the Germans up there actually, it's not exactly particle projection, but the word is very, very similar.
Okay.
Less C's and more K's or something like that. And it's the vessels that have this weapon generally have a big hole in the front of them that goes right into the middle of the hull, because it's a big weapon. And these weapons were designed to basically take out big underground bases that are heavily secured and whatnot. Because they, when they hit the ground, it's like, if you imagine an atomic bomb going off, like a nuclear bomb, but it's just continuous. That's the amount of power that one of these things have. But when they hit the atmosphere, they become really messy. They, they cause a great deal of destruction. But when they're being used against targets which are built inside of objects that have natural objects that have no atmosphere, they're actually, I found them really pretty to watch, because they're almost invisible, except the beam itself twinkles. It's really pretty. It's the ceramic dust that they inject into they're called hyperlight lasers, because they normally are, the light is accelerated to about 2 times the speed of light. And the ceramic dust, which is injected into the beam, creates a plasma, and as it condensates, it twinkles like glitter. And when that beam is moving across space against the blackness, it's really pretty. Just recall that.
Sounds
really well.
like it would be.
Yeah.
The ships that I have been on that were part of warfare tended to use a tractor beam and get an asteroid and just drop it.
Well, it's much safer.
The potential energy of the fall, by the time it hits, it's majorly effective. It's a planet killer, and especially if there's an atmosphere, it just sends the plasma around the whole thing, basically kills everybody with just 1 or 2 strikes.
And that's the problem with them. From a strategic perspective, they're
too big.
They're a shotgun. You know, they're like, if nobody ever wants to completely destroy the biosphere on a blue planet, like it's silly. You know, it's such a waste. That's the reason why the space to ground cannons, weapons are, that was the purpose that they were conceived for. They were a precise weapon, so you could take out a specific target. Interestingly enough, I suspect there are signs here on Earth of them being used, because there are places where you can see the round hole just basically going straight down into the ground, roughly 100 meters across or so, and going down like 300 or 400, 500 meters, and the sides have that peculiar like straightness to,
beam.
So I suspect, and they here they're filled full of water and whatnot, but I suspect that they may have been the same class of weapon but used long ago in the past. So,
Well, that isn't that far-fetched. The Guardians told me that we have reached this point in our development 4 times in the past. And we're given the opportunity to become a galactic level 0 civilization, to be brought to that point, and that every time we've told them no, and at which point we were put back to the Stone Age to start over.
yeah.
And that decision is going to be offered to us again soon if we don't
Very soon.
if we don't self-destruct in the meantime.
We've got the other day I was given an actual time schedule.
Are you?
Yeah. And we don't have much, well, they don't have much time left. So they need to get their asses into gear and decide one way or another. And I hope they make the right decision, because if they don't, it's going to be a hard couple of years for them.
It's going to be a hard couple of 100 years for them.
Yeah. So, but it's not like people who are listening, I'm not talking about them like coming in and destroying civilization with weapons, or it's nothing like that. There's an actual event which is going to occur, and if they are not considered to be of standard or safe enough, essentially, it will be allowed to happen.
And if we say we want to learn, then it will be stopped.
Yep. I actually saw footage the other day captured on one of the solar observer craft of them testing the field to stop it happening. It was so cool. It's big, like it's really big. But I initially thought that that on the imaging, it was picking up some kind of spacecraft, but on an enormous scale. But now I actually understand what you're actually picking up on there is the solar wind from the sun skirting around the outside of its field. So
Yeah.
It's nowhere near that big, but it'll do the job.
There have been several photographs lately with very large objects apparently coming out of the sun. And these are much larger than any of the ships that I know of. So I wasn't sure what they were.
Yeah, but what you're looking at, the actual size of those things coming out of the sun is a lot smaller than the space that you're seeing, because what you're seeing is the plasma skirting around the outside of the magnetic field of the craft. So if it was an actual object, it would have to be multiples the size of Jupiter.
Yeah.
But it's just the actual volume that the field that's protecting the crafts is taking up.
Well, I keep telling people, we really need to accept this offer. And I keep getting hit with demons.
I think that we really need to accept this offer is probably slightly understated.
Well, I have found soft sell works better than slapping them.
Yeah, I don't want to be I would probably get into a lot of trouble if we would get into a lot of trouble if we actually broadcast the nature of the imminent thing. What would you call it?
The event.
The event, that'll do. Um, you know, causing fear is like a big no-no. So
Well, I've been talking about it for the last 6 years. It's not like
well, I hope they pay attention.
it's not like I have kept it a secret.
No, that's true.
So, but
But
it's
very, very little.
up to them if they want to listen or not. So their future is completely in their hands. They just have to stop being religious long enough to think.
Well, let me put it this way. I'm not overly confident.
I'm not either, but at the same time, it's the only game in town.
Yep. And I remember that it's interesting. You know, let's talk about. Should we talk about spiritualism?
We could.
It seems to be the powers that be don't really like us talking about our spiritualism. But
I've been talking about it in bits and pieces, and yeah, they usually get upset about it.
well, I remember
I've had them kill people because I went into too much detail.
And you can't call it religion because in the colonies up there, religion is actually considered to be almost like a disease.
Yeah.
You know, it enslaves the population. And when I was in academy, like religious people who were religious were considered to be essentially
Mentally ill.
Yes, that's the best way it could be said. Yes, and you know, they like I mean, they educated atheism into you.
Mm-hmm.
There was no doubt about that. But it wasn't like they said, you gotta not be religious or else. It'll just be like, here's the reality of it. Here are the experiments that back it up. Here's the science. You'll figure it out if you've got two brain cells to rub together. And that's essentially
I
what
was
happened.
told flat out that religion was the way that the population was enslaved, and that all of the deities that humanity serves all eat people.
Yeah.
They are literally farming you and you're worshiping them.
Yeah. And so I think it was very important that one of the first things they did up there was to break that religious training.
Mm-hmm.
To break what, if you did have that engineering in you, to break it. I was very lucky because of my genetic background, and I didn't have much to break in the first place. But I know that for some people, it's very hard.
Well, my family, the family that I was born into and raised with was extremely religious and part of a cult. So I had trouble going back and forth.
It must have been very hard for you. My family was very, I'm not going to say, they weren't atheists. They weren't even really agnostic, but they were kind of just open. There weren't any strong beliefs in anything really. And so for me, like, it wasn't really too much of a problem. But to actually be going through that and be having to return to a strongly religious family, that would be hard. The amount of, I'm not going to say hate, but anger and frustration that I'm not sure if it was instilled into me or I came across it myself, because we all had it.
Mm-hmm. But
the amount of anger and frustration that you felt towards the religious system on earth, like it almost bordered on hate.
I
But like,
didn't feel that I had programming to accept the belief system, but I felt the hypocrisy between what was taught and what was practiced.
yeah,
And I was like a constant thorn in their side because I kept pointing out their hypocrisy.
yeah. I used to, I just like to just not talk to them about it. There was a religious guy who was one of, I won't name what type of religion it was, it's not really important, but he was brought up in a very religious family and was very religious. And I was constantly like, I was just perplexed as to why it was he believed what he did. And I would just like, you know, bring him evidence, the stuff that I could find, and say, but this, like, so does this change your mind? And then he would just
Nope.
say, no,
It's
that's been put there by the devil to tempt me. And I'm just like,
it's programming. It has
yeah,
absolutely nothing to do with rational thought. It's
no,
completely programming, and it's about control. It's not about salvation, but they don't get it because they're programmed.
yeah. It's so I went and spoke to my superior at academy and
Mhm.
about my confusion because this person, this boy seemed to be pretty intelligent.
Some of
And
them are.
yeah, and I spoke to my superior and said, like, I don't understand, like, why are they still doing this? Like, I've presented all the evidence, like it's and I was told that that number one, that they're engineered that way,
Mhm.
so it's not their fault. And
No,
number
it's not.
two, um, they're engineered to feel that it brings them comfort, and that to tear away at that comfort is like to steal the blanket off a sleepy baby. Like,
Yeah,
why would you do it? What's it going to achieve? And in the end, all it's going to do is cause suffering.
yeah.
And so, why would you do that? That was my superior's question. Why would you even do that? And that was a big turning point for me. Because I realized that there are some things that the people here just can't do.
Yeah. The programming is so thick and engineered into their DNA through cell memory. I have ancestors who have literally fought and died over which version of Christianity was the true religion.
See, that just seems insane to me. It's
Uh,
like,
one of my ancestors killed millions through Europe over it. Yeah.
it's just crazy. Like I can't fathom how it is that a person can be convinced to kill somebody because of a disagreement of a philosophical nature.
It's not a philosophical nature. It's who's going to have control over the masses.
Well, yeah, but the real truth of it is it's not actually over whose version of religion is more accurate. The truth of it is who's
Who's
who
going to
the
be
person is, who's going to be in charge.
who's going to be in
That's
charge? That's what it really
yeah,
is. And
yeah.
until the masses are at a point where that they can grasp that concept, it's never going to change.
And it just seems so plainly clear, like obvious.
It
But
is if you're logical
yeah, or foreign.
or foreign. We have spent more time out there than we have here, and that makes us foreign. I grew up first on Mars with the Germans. that makes me a foreigner here. No matter what I do, I still have that as the foundation.
Pretty much the same.
Well,
You know-
we're getting close to the end of our time.
Mhm.
Thank you for coming. And
It's been my pleasure.
I will hunt down Space Jesus.
Please do. That would make my day.
So thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you. I hope you enjoy this. I think it's important that we put this information out there so that in years to come, maybe it can be referred to show that maybe there is some truth to what we experience.
Well, I hope so.
Oh hi, Space Jesus again. If you're looking for a little redemption, hop on over to patreon.com/realitybrief or redbubble.com/people/realitybrief and think about giving a little something to that cause. Why donate to the pot and church when you can donate to some pot instead?